Hello, this is Dr. Butler, and today we are going to be doing a lab called amount reacted. We are going to react sodium bicarbonate with some hydrochloric acid, and we're going to do that inside a flask. We're going to measure the mass before, we're going to measure the mass afterwards, and based on measuring the mass before and measuring the mass afterwards, we're going to figure out how much gas was produced and see if that corresponds to what we should get using stoichiometry. All right, so you can follow along with these instructions. I want you to try to write down the exact measurements as we do these and track everything that we're going to do. So first of all, I'm going to zero the scale, and then I am going to put an empty flask, an empty 150 Erlenmeyer flask on the scale, which then reads 90.62 grams. 90.62 grams. I am going to write that out. Now we are going to measure, step 2, we're going to measure some sodium bicarbonate, and we're going to measure between 0.2 and 0.5 grams. We have to get somewhere in between those two numbers for this to work properly. So I'm going to take some sodium bicarbonate, add it into this, and I added too much. So I have now what says 0.44 grams. I don't know for sure if that's how much is going to get into the flask. So now I am going to make sure that this is zeroed, place it on here again, and I'm going to place all of the sodium bicarbonate that I have into the flask. And measure what the flask weighs now, 91.06. So now the flask plus sodium bicarbonate weighs 91.06 grams. Okay. Now we're going to add some hydrochloric acid to it. And we are going to place some hydrochloric acid into a graduated cylinder. I'm going to measure out 15 millimeters of this. And it doesn't have to be exact. So I have about 17 millimeters of hydrochloric acid, and I'm going to measure how much that weighs with the graduated cylinder. And so the graduated cylinder and hydrochloric acid is 56.93 grams. What we're going to do is we're going to add some of that to the flask, and then we're going to measure what that, how much I added. So I'm going to add to the flask, and you're going to see some bubbles form. I'm just going to put a little bit, not a whole bunch, but can you see those bubbles form? Swirl it so that it fully reacts. It's done reacting. I'm going to add just a little bit more excess hydrochloric acid. See if there's any more that reacts. And I see that there's no more that reacts. No more bubbles are formed. So now I'm going to measure how much hydrochloric acid I used by weighing the graduated cylinder a second time, which is now 42.47 grams. 42.47 grams. And then weigh how much is in my flask after it has reacted. So now my flask and the products are 105.36 grams in total. So there's my experiment. I have measured, I measured an empty flask. I added some sodium bicarbonate to that. I measured a full graduated cylinder, and then I emptied some hydrochloric acid into it and weighed that again, and I measured my products. I should be able to see how much mass is in my reactants, how much mass is in my products, and figure out how much of that, how much is missing. That missing stuff was the bubbles that you see there. I'm going to perform this experiment one second time to see if my measurements are about the same. Thank you.